name is Leona Carney, and I'm a missionary, and I've been on the mission field for over 40 years. In fact, it's now 41 years. But I received the call to go to missions when I was 9 years old. Visiting missionaries came to the church, and when he asked if anyone wanted to accept the Lord, I raised my hand. At that time, I remember it was like I was laughing and crying at the same time. But in the church that I went to, they didn't do a lot of follow-up with children, and so no one followed up. I was just a kid, 9 years old. But something in me changed, and I wanted to be at the church all the time. I used to go up to the church and sit on a log behind the church office, and I made up Bible stories, and I'd sit on this log and teach them to nobody. And I had such a desire to teach the Bible and to be a missionary. Unfortunately, when I became a teenager, I decided that I didn't want any part of church. And then for many years, I walked in rebellion. Finally, the Lord, in His infinite grace and mercy and love, drew me back into fellowship with Him. Now, it's interesting because this is 25 years later, since the time I had my call to go to missions. I had, in this time, been married, had children, was a grandmother, actually. And but God had not changed the call that He placed on my life. So I was late in answering that call, but eventually I responded. Now that's another story. How that happened is I was, my husband had left me when I became a believer, so I was at that time by myself with my two daughters, and they were in high school. And Sarah was out of high school. And I had taken the kids to the beach, and I was listening to these tapes by Kay Smith titled Pleasing God. And I could just hear her saying all the time, not on the tapes, but just in my mind, what would keep you from pleasing God? And I would think, my children, and at that time, actually, Sarah was married, my children, and, I'm going to be a grandmother, my first grandchild, and my house, you gave me this house. And I would settle down with that, and then I would hear that voice again. What would keep you from pleasing God, from going anywhere and doing anything? And once again, I would think, well, my children, I'm going to be a grandmother, my house. And this went on at about 20-minute intervals, I think, all day long that we were at the beach. Finally, around 4 o'clock, we're collecting things to come home. And the Lord spoke to me very clearly, and He said, do you mean that your children and your grandchild and your house are more important to you than I am? I thought, oh, no, Lord. No. And I'll go anywhere and I'll do anything you want me to do. And so I knew that I had to sell the house. And I came back, I had that understanding. And I came back and I thought, well, how am I going to sell my house? I never did that before, selling a house. And the Lord put somebody's name in my mind. And I called them and asked them, would you be interested in buying my house? And she said, yes, as a matter of fact, I would. So that was like 4 o'clock that we were leaving the beach. And it was 6 o'clock when I sold my house. And that actually started my ventures in missions. Now, since that time, I have served around the world, literally around the world. And I'd like to be able to share some of those experiences with you. I think, however, first, I should share where I am now and how I got here. At this point in time, 41 years later, I'm in Villavicencio, Colombia, and I've been here for almost 2 years. I've been working to help establish a Bible college here and teaching classes and working with women's groups, mentoring and counseling. Basically, that's what I've been doing here in Villa Vicencia. But how I got here, I was living in the Andes in Peru, high up in the mountains in a little place called Urubamba, which is the sacred valley from the Incas. And I frequently would travel to teach in other cities and other countries. So I was visiting Colombia because I was on a speaking tour here. I was speaking in Bogota, and then I came down to Villa Vicencia in response to a request and was teaching here. And the Lord started putting on my heart to move to Villa Vicencia. And I thought, that's totally crazy, because I never had any interest in moving to, I loved the house actually that I was living in Urubamba. So, but it kept coming and kept coming. Well, the young man that I was working with here shared with me his vision to start a Bible college. And the Lord was impressing me to come here and help him start the Bible college. This was in September, I believe. And yes, it was in September. So I have an accountability team that I submit everything to. And on one of the team members, I actually called her on Facebook Messenger and told her what was going on. I said, this is really strange that I'm getting this impression. And she said, this is very strange, because last night when we were praying for you, we were led to pray that you would move to Colombia. And she said, we couldn't understand, where is that coming from out of the blue to pray for you to move to Colombia? So that was really strong confirmation, and the Lord did give me other confirmation also. So within 1 month, I was actually moving into my apartment in Colombia. And the first year that I was here, I worked strictly with starting the Bible. I did do some teaching, but my main effort and energy was in establishing a Bible college here. So after I sold my house and I was able to be there when my granddaughter was born, my oldest daughter, who was in high school, she and I packed up and went to Israel. That's where we first were. And we worked together on a kibbutz, and she wanted to come back to the States to graduate from high school. So she did that, and she stayed with an aunt. And then I finished up the commitment in Israel and was back in the States. And the Lord started speaking to me about going to at this mission school, Youth with a Mission, actually, although I wasn't a youth. And I didn't like the idea of being associated with a mission called Youth with a Mission. But the Lord kept speaking to me to apply to go very specifically to Youth with a Mission in Holland. So I sent an application. And in the meantime, I was also working in the States and saving money to be able to go to mission school or wherever the Lord was going to lead me next. So I applied to Youth with a Mission in Holland, and they wrote back and said that they did not have room for me for the September was when I was applying for. And but the Lord kept telling me to go. Finally, I bought a ticket, packed the suitcases, and went to Holland. Now, this is the first time in my life that I ever wanted to be the last one to get my suitcase after the plane landed, because these people told me no, there was no place for me. So, and don't you know, the only time in my life my suitcase came down was the first one down. So I went to information and asked them how to get to Heidelberg, which was the name of the place that I needed to go. They gave me instructions. This is long before there were trains that came right into the airport. So they gave me instructions how to go to this little bus station. And I had to take that bus and then change buses in a certain place and take another bus. So then I got dropped off in this country lane and this little country road. And the bus driver was just pointing to me to go that way. So I started walking down. Now, I've been flying all night. I'm really tired. These people have told me not to come. I'm lugging a suitcase and a carry-on suitcase down this country road, and I was not happy. Finally, I met, and it seemed like forever before I ran into somebody else. And it intersected, and there was a woman there. And I asked her, I showed her on the envelope the address that I was looking for. The name of the school, actually, is what it was. And she pointed me down this other little road, which I then went down, and it dead-ended at the school. And I thought, I'm not going in there. And I sat down underneath this tree, and I thought, I am not going in there, Lord, because they told me there was no place for me, and I'm not going in there. If you want me to go in there, then you're going to have to send somebody out here to get me. So I'm sitting there steaming and fussing with my head down, and I hear this voice in English say, "Are you okay?" And I looked up and I said, "No, I'm not. The Lord told me to come here, and they told me there's no place for me." And I just started rambling on, and she said, "Well, why don't you come inside?" And so I went inside, and she told the elders the situation, and they invited me to spend the night in their guest room, and they said that they would pray and see if maybe they had not heard the Lord correctly, if this was the actual semester that the Lord wanted me to be in this class. So I spent the night, they prayed. The next day, it was maybe noon or something before I was called in, and they told me, "No, we have prayed, and we still do not feel like this is the right time for you to be here. You can reapply for next term, but we don't feel like this is the right time for you to be here." And I was just so humiliated. I was absolutely humiliated. So the one elder said to me, "And what are you going to do?" And I said, "I'm going back to Amsterdam and taking the next plane to Israel." And he said, "Well, I wouldn't, if the Lord told you to come to Youth with a Mission Holland, I wouldn't get on a plane and go back to Israel." He said, "Do you know anybody in Amsterdam?" Because they also had a facility in Amsterdam. And I said, "Well, I know Karen and Celeste." And he said, two people. And he said, "Well, go to the Samaritan's Inn in Amsterdam, and maybe the Lord has something for you there." I just said yes, because I just was so absolutely humiliated. I just wanted to get away from there. So I got on a train, and he explained to me, he said, "It's right when you come out of the train station, just look across the street, and you're going to see a big sign on top of a building that says Samaritan's Inn." Well, what happened is I came into the train station in Amsterdam, and I went out the wrong way. So I'm walking up and down the street, and I don't see any sign for Samaritan Inn. All I see is a canal and a lot of boats, and I was tired, I was humiliated, and I just said, "That's it. I'm going right through that train station. I'm taking the first bus back to the airport, and I'm on the first plane to Israel. I've had it." So I'm pulling these suitcases through the train station. By the way, only one of them had wheels. The other one was this big, this is a long time ago, heavy leather suitcase that I'm dragging. That was a jumbo one. So I'm dragging them through the train station, and I get out in front of the train station, and the bus is right there. And I'm just like this close to the bus. And these two guys walk by, and the Lord said to me, "Ask them if they speak English." And I said, "No, and I'm not going to ask them." The words just came out of my mouth. I said, "Excuse me, do you speak English?" And I just wanted to swallow those words. And the young man turned around to me and he said, "Well, yes, we do. Can we help you?" And I said, do you know where the Good Samaritan Inn is? And he said, oh, you mean the Samaritan Inn? It's right over there. And I thought to myself, it's still too far, and I'm going to the airport. And as I'm thinking that, he said, can we help you? And lifted up the suitcases and started walking me over to Samaritan Inn. Okay, so I get to Samaritan Inn. The office is up on the second floor, carrying everything, but these boys were helping me up to the second floor. Asked the girl if, Karen or Celeste were around. Both of them were out of the country. I thought, this is a continuing nightmare. It's never going to end. I need to get to the airport. And she said to me, but it was already late. So I said, do you know a hostel that I could rent a room for the night? She said, no, we have a guest room. We have a hospitality room. Why don't you stay here for the night? And she said, also, maybe the elders need to pray about this because maybe the Lord wants you to be here. And I'm thinking to myself, right. I've just about had it with this. I just want to go back to Israel. So I spent the night, and the elders were praying about it for over a week. For over a week. I'm thinking, how long does it take to get a yes or no? This is not hard. But they were very kind to me. They made me feel very welcome, and I was actually enjoying my time. I just wanted an answer about what am I going to do with the rest of my life. So finally, after a week, the elders called me in, and they said they felt, yes, that the Lord would have me volunteer with the staff in Amsterdam. And they got verses and visions from the Lord. Now, I wasn't around people who were getting visions all the time, but the verses and the impressions that they had that were like a vision confirmed very clearly that this is where the Lord wanted me. And I spent 6 months there as a volunteer. It was a wonderful learning, growing time. I learned so much. I was so blessed to be a part of that ministry, working in the red light district and where all the drug deals were going on and everything in the heart of Amsterdam. And it was such a blessing. And then, of course, it takes money to do that. So my school money I used up. When all my money was gone, then the school from Heidelberg called and spoke to the receptionist, David, and told David that there was wanting to know if I still wanted to go to class there. And what happened, how I found out about it, is I was going to home group that night. And as I was entering the home group, Paula told me that David Ablue wanted to talk to me. So I talked to him, and he said, Leona, do you still want to go to Heidelberg? And I said, well, I don't have the money. So he said, well, I had a phone call from the States, and they wanted to know if you were still going and how much the school would cost, because they want to cover the complete cost of all that it will cost for you to go to school. And I thought he was joking with me. So I said, oh, yeah, okay, right, David. And so I went in to the home group, and Paula said, what did David want? And I told her, and I said, he's just joking around, that David Ablue. She said, Leona, he would never joke about something like that. And so she encouraged me to call him back, and I called him back, and I said, David, tell me the truth. I don't want you to be joking around with me. You have to be absolutely honest with me. Is somebody really going to pay for my fee to go to school? And he said, yes, I told you that. Do you still want to go? I said, yeah, sure. So this is that was very exciting for me. And I went to it was called a DTS SOE. So that was a discipleship training and School of Evangelism combined. And again, another wonderful time, which is where I actually got my call to Thailand. And I spent 11 years in Thailand. but I'll tell you about that at another time. So, here I was at this wonderful school in Holland, just being blessed by the wonderful teaching, the beautiful, sweet fellowship. And in this particular school, we started every day with an hour of intercession. So during these times of intercession from the first day, the Lord started giving me visions. When I say a vision, it was just like a movie in my mind. And they were of children. And in the beginning, they were of children of the world. I mean, it hadn't narrowed in on anything. And at first, I thought it was my imagination. I thought, I'm around all these people that have visions, so now I'm going to start having visions. That's ridiculous. This has to be my imagination. But they kept coming. And soon it started to focus in on children that were being sold into the slave market. And then it went very specifically to children in Thailand who were being sold into the slave market. The Lord gave me visions of children that were really overwhelming. And I didn't know what to do about them. And I started asking people, have you ever heard anything about children being sold and living on garbage dumps? Because some of them, the children were living on garbage dumps. And a lot of people told me no. And then finally, somebody said, oh, yes, I saw a documentary about that. And that was the first confirmation I had that this was a reality. During this time, I started meeting regularly every time that we had an opportunity with another woman who also had a burden for children, and we would pray together. One time we were meeting, it was early in the morning, and it was the morning after something that very significant happened. Let me tell you about that first and put this in context. We would have corporate worship several times a week, and this was an evening when we were having corporate worship. And for some reason, I just couldn't enter into worship. My mind kept being distracted. I would be thinking these silly little thoughts, did I close the door? Did I put off the light? Funny things like that. And finally, I just said, Lord, please, I would like to enter into worship. I'm so sorry. Please bring my mind captive. And the Lord gave me this vision in my mind of the universe. It was just like something you would see in a Star Wars movie or something, the universe out there. And but it was filled with worship. It was just vibrating. The universe was just vibrating with worship. And I could hear that worship, but then I could hear the room full of worship, and then it's like he touched my ear, and I could hear individuals, but I heard the individual it's just them, but yet there was the background of everybody else in the room, which was a background to everybody in the universe just vibrating. And when he touched my ear, the Lord spoke to my heart how in tune he was with the individual. So I had a beautiful time of worship that night. This was the following morning, and we're praying, and the Lord gives me that same vision of the universe. Only this time it was filled with the screams of children. And it was so horrible that I couldn't stand to hear it. And I was just covering my ears, and I ended up down on the floor just covering my ears. And I knew the Lord was waiting. He was waiting for me to respond. And finally I said, you have got to promise me there'll be a breakthrough, because if you don't promise me there'll be a breakthrough, I never want to see this again. And the Lord said, I promise. And I said, okay, I'll go anywhere. I'll do anything you want me to do. Meaning that I would go to Thailand, because now the visions were all centered on little girls in Thailand. And I said, I'll go. I'll go anywhere you want me to do. I'll do anything that you want me to do. And he said very clearly, count the cost, because it will cost you everything. You will need to lay down every detail, every aspect of your life. And I had just heard all these children screaming, and I said, I'll do it. I'll do it. I'm willing. And he gave me a verse in Exodus where it says, the Lord heard the cry of the children of Israel because of their cruel taskmaster. And because of their cruel taskmaster, I'm sending you. So that was further confirmation. And then there was not anyone in Thailand after mission school, after I went home and worked some more to get some more money. There was no one that I could connect with in Thailand who was doing that type of work. And in fact, there was no one that I could connect with in Thailand because I didn't know anybody in Thailand. So what happened was I got on a plane and went to Thailand. And I didn't even know how to get out of the airport. All these people were coming at me, taxi, taxi, and I was just like terrified. But the Lord, I saw somebody who was obviously Western, and I asked him if he knew how I could get a bus because I was going to go to the YWCA and rent a room. And he said he happened to be the courier for the British Embassy, and he said, I'm going right by there. I'll drop you off. So it's like the Lord actually sent somebody to the airport to pick me up. And I started to do research on the child slave market. And I was beginning to read in newspapers and to hear through interviews things that I had only seen in visions when I was at the mission school. And I ended up going to language school, and I started to go to the slave market to buy children. And I was actually in Thailand for 11 years. By the time I left, I had over 100 daughters. Now, those little girls are all grown and married or in professions and have children. So I have daughters and grandchildren in Thailand too. Many, many exciting things happened while I was in Thailand that are a tremendous witness of the Lord's provision and protection and his faithfulness. I'm so impressed with how the Lord's calls are without repentance. He called me when I was 9 years old. I wasted many years in rebellion, but he never changed the call he placed on my life. And in his mercy, he drew me back into a relationship with him and enabled me the wonderful, blessed, awesome privilege of serving him.